How's it going, everybody? It's your world champion here, and we are back to talk about Bleach. I have just finished the battle with Aizen. This whole big saga about Aizen and the Arrancars is finally over. We don't have any videos left of Bleach, especially before the Thousand Year Blood War arc comes around in the anime. So, without further ado, let's just dive right in. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, and a lot of thoughts that have kind of changed within me just in the past 5 years it's been since I revisited the series. So let's just talk about it. Where we last left off, Ichigo was heading back to Karakura Town, or the fake Karakura Town if you will, to confront Aizen, who is currently being held up by the other captains of the Soul Society. Ichigo leaves with Unohana and they just head on through the Garganta. Now, they talk a little bit about Ichigo and his powers, because as they're going through, they kind of switch positions a little bit, because Ichigo, he's not really good with controlling his spirit energy, so the walkway that they're making is kind of unstable. But they have a couple conversations. One is about how Ichigo's the only person that has ever met Aizen that has never seen his Shikai. So that's one advantage that they have, is that Ichigo cannot be hypnotized by Aizen. And the other one too is Ichigo isn't fully healed. And this is kind of when we find out that Ichigo's kimono, like the robes he wears when he's in Bankai, is actually like part of his Bankai. And it shares with him the power that he has. So Unohana is able to restore him back to full strength as they're going back to the Soul Society. So what does everybody else have to do? Kenpachi is pretty much making quick work of Yami, and Byakuya kind of teases him a little bit with this, being like, why don't you just finish off your prey and all that. Yami transforms and it's him versus Byakuya versus Kenpachi, because I guess they have a bit of a rivalry and they want to fight. But my biggest gripe is this thing with Yami, because again, he was hyped up to be even stronger than everybody else. He was apparently the Zero Espada. And spoiler alert, this gets off screen. At the end of the arc, Byakuya and Kenpachi just return to the Soul Society. They have a little bit of injuries, but nothing too severe. And we just cut over to Yami, who's just dying there in Hueco Mundo. And of course, Kenpachi just being like, oh yeah, it wasn't much fun as I thought it would be. It was kind of boring, actually. So, the fact that the apparent strongest Espada gets off screen and says that it was boring anyways, God, that just sucks, man. I'm sorry. I mean, I think I get what Kubo was going for with Yami in this, but man, it just kind of sucks, because he was hyped up. He even hyped himself up to be the best Espada and the strongest Espada, but he really didn't amount to much. And I think part of it is that he might have had the power behind him. Maybe his power output was probably greater than everybody else's, but everybody else used, and by everybody else I mean the Espada, they used their powers in many unique ways where they could get around a lot of things. So I'll take Zamari for example. He probably could have done something to Kenpachi. I mean, it probably wouldn't have been much, but he would have been able to do something, probably a little more than frickin' Yami, you know? So Yami was kind of a disappointment. I think, again, his thing was just okay, I get more powerful the more angry I get. So it might have been something like maybe potential to be the strongest one, and maybe Aizen just gave him that number 0 just to kind of tease him or make him feel better about it. I don't know, but Yami's disposed of and all that. Now, backtracking a little bit, as Ichigo was leaving, we get this little moment with Byakuya and Kurotsuchi, who in their own ways believe in Ichigo. Byakuya gave that speech to Ichigo before he left about how he's the one that needs to protect Karakura Town. Kurotsuchi in his own way sent him away and isn't doing anything weird to him, even though Ichigo kind of teased him as he was leaving. But he's not going to do anything weird because he believes that Ichigo can do it, and that's why he sent him rather than the other captains, except for Unohana, obviously. So that's where Ichigo is, but while that's happening, all the other captains are starting to come up towards Aizen, except for Kommamura and Hisagi, who have to deal with Tosen. And this fight's kind of emotional because, you know, we have this dynamic with Kommamura and Tosen where like they both believe in justice, yet it's their own sense of justices, because one is trying to get revenge for the dead friend that they lost because of Soul Reapers and because of the Soul Society, while the other one is trying to uphold justice to honor and pay back somebody that saved their life and all that. So that's basically the fight with this. And then Hisagi's just in there because he's the product of both of these guys, where like he learned a lot from both of them growing into the lieutenant that he is. And man, this fight is this fight's intense. It's more of that clash of ideals, but we see just how far Tosen was willing to go, because he ends up becoming an Arrancar in a way, because he puts on a mask, easily takes out Hisagi. Another thing too, like you get these moments with like Hisagi and Tosen as, you know, they're fighting, like with the quick example of Hisagi like stepping back if his heart feels fear from his opponent, so that way like he doesn't take a lot of damage from the attack that Tosen did. But again, Hisagi gets blown back, and then Tosen and Kommamura end up having their fight, and we get a little bit more of their story about, you know, Kommamura coming up to Tosen, finding him, their stories throughout the ranks of the Soul Society and all that. And that's when we get to see that Tosen now has a resurrection form, which is like this giant cricket form, and he just obliterates Kommamura. Kommamura can't even stand a chance against Tosen. And I mean, again, there's not much to this fight. It's mainly just the story between the two of how these two men of justice and the way they went, where one was more revenge and one was more for gratitude and respect. And we see that a lot, mainly in how they talk and how they interact, because when Tosen becomes this resurrected like cricket figure, he ends up being able to see, and with his eyesight he finally sees Kommamura for the first time. And now throughout this whole fight, Kommamura, he's starting to kind of resolve himself with killing Tosen, and it's not until this moment where Tosen calls him a monster that you see it in his face. He's just like, okay, I am gonna have to take you out. We're just too different. We were born to clash, and here we go. Let's do this. Let's finish this off. So again, Tosen stomps Kommamura easily, and before he can get another blow in, Hisagi comes in and just like stabs Tosen in like the back of the neck. And probably one of my favorite kills in the whole series. So Hisagi, while his sword's like in Tosen's neck and still there, he releases it, and so like it comes out, like slices Tosen's neck and all that. It's pretty good. It's pretty badass, and I love it. And then they have a moment here where like Tosen's dying, and he sees Hisagi and Kommamura for one last time. He's kind of regretting what he's done and like the path he led. Granted, you know, he did it because he cared about his friend that died and wanted to get revenge on the society that turned their backs on her. Unfortunately, you know, he had to meet Kommamura on the way, and you know, they had their friendships and all that. But Tosen doesn't get to finish his last words because he just explodes. And Hisagi's just like, oh shit. And then Kommamura looks up, sees Aizen, and starts freaking out. And luckily he doesn't go right at Aizen, because Ichigo comes out of the sky and tries to attack Aizen. But he's not wearing his mask, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, about why he didn't wear his mask and just some of Ichigo's reservations and all that. So backtracking a little bit, before all this, Aizen was fighting Shinji. And we get to see, you know, Shinji's release sword, and basically its power is versus your senses, and you know, left is right, up is down, west is east, you know, things like that. And it's powerful, yes, and it can confuse people, but it's not powerful enough to really throw Aizen off. And he even says that, he's just like, this is child's play to me. I can get through this easily. It's not like complete hypnosis like my Zanpakuto. I can easily get out of this. We get this awesome speech from Aizen where, you know, he's talking to Shinji and they're having this discussion about like trust and all that. And Aizen basically says, I never asked any of my subordinates to trust me. And he goes on this speech about how like people are creatures that crave to have faith and trust towards those above him, and basically calling himself a god. Which, I mean, if your mere presence can put down your sixth in command to his knees, you kind of have a right to be full of yourself with that. So they have their conversation. Like I said, Ichigo comes out of the sky, tries to go after Aizen. Doesn't really work, but the other captains show up, and Kommamura actually stops Ichigo from continuing. And he actually thanks Ichigo, because if it wasn't for him stepping in, Kommamura would have done what he did in Soul Society and just tried to bum rush Aizen. But this is where all the captains come through, and they're basically like, hey, Ichigo, you do have a duty and a job here, but because you are the key to defeating Aizen, we're going to be the ones to make that opening for you to launch a killing blow on him. So yeah, everybody goes after Aizen. They try to attack him. There's a couple quick little quirks here and there with like Hitsugaya and Shunsui and all them, but I mean, Aizen basically schools everybody. And the best part, see, I love Aizen because he loves to toy around with the Soul Society and play around with everybody. But the thing is, this is my favorite moment of him just playing with everybody, because as they're doing all their things and, you know, going in after Aizen, and they finally get a good blow in thanks to some teamwork from Shinji and Hitsugaya with like reversing shit, and then like bam, sword through the chest. But then the best part comes when Ichigo, he just yells out, hey, what the hell are you guys doing? And it turns out they were stabbing Momo through the chest. Now, if you've been following my videos for a while, you know I'm not the biggest fan of Momo. that she's the one that gets stabbed. It's just more of those mind games that Aizen plays with everybody. And he decides, okay, well, I'm done playing. I'm just gonna obliterate everybody. So Aizen obliterates everybody, and it's just Ichigo left. Or is it? Because Yamamoto shows up. Where's he been all along? Well, he's been setting up a nice little trap for Aizen to defeat him with his Zanpakuto and all that. But unfortunately, there is one more Arrancar still around. Someone else got off screen. That was Kensei. Kensei got defeated somehow. And here's Wonderweiss, who has resurrected into his Extinguar form, which basically he was created to nerf Yamamoto for this, which honestly, brilliant work. Not only from Kubo, but from Aizen. Just thinking multiple steps ahead, being like, okay, I need to figure out a way to get rid of the strongest Zanpakuto in the Soul Society. That person's Zanpakuto is Yamamoto's, and he needs to be out of the picture. Now, Yamamoto says, you know, even if you take away my Zanpakuto, I'm still strong as hell. And he just decimates poor Wonderweiss here. But unfortunately for Yamamoto, Wonderweiss had like taken in all of his flames and is about to explode. So Yamamoto actually like takes the brunt of the explosion. And in perfectly evil fashion, Aizen just walks down with his sword and he's about to just cut off Yamamoto's head. And then he hits him with a good old, I think it was Hado 96. But it's basically a sacrificial Hado where Yamamoto got rid of his charred off arm and basically just sent this huge blaze of explosion right on the Aizen. And that was the catalyst for Ichigo to put his mask on and go after Aizen. He did injure Aizen. He got him. He got him pretty good. It's unfortunate that the Hogyoku is still a thing, and that Aizen fused himself with the Hogyoku, and this is where we get just the biggest dump of information, and just lore and character study and all that stuff. Where do I even start with this? So back in the day, back in the olden days, back when I was in like high school, reading this weekly and all that, this chapter that came out where Aizen revealed that he was the one behind everything. Like, he knew of Ichigo since the beginning, and we'll get to that statement here in a little bit. But he knew of Ichigo since the beginning, and he spent some of his time and his life curating Ichigo. He groomed Ichigo into the warrior that he is today. He made sure that Ichigo would end up meeting Rukia, and that Rukia would be giving him his powers, and that, you know, Ichigo would have to face off against the Menos, and that Ichigo would have to face Renji and Byakuya, that they were the two that had to go fight him. That Ichigo would go into the Rukon district with Uruhara's like area and all that. That Ichigo would come in through the Flower Crane Cannon, and that Ichigo would confront Gin, that Ichigo would confront Ikkaku, and Ichigo would fight Renji again and fight Kenpachi and Byakuya, Grimmjow, Ukiura, all of them. Aizen planned it so that Ichigo would grow into this being that he could fight. Now, why is this? I'm going to touch on that here near the end of the video when we talk about the final round of Ichigo and Aizen, because I think that's where I really want to talk about all this. So, but let me just tell you, when Little High School Walk-Ins was just, again, Little High School Walk-Ins, and this chapter came out, and this moment came out, and this reveal came out, mind explode. This blew my mind back then. I'm just like, wait, how this man was able to basically, again, groom this person from the day they were born, which, fun fact, that's what he meant by the beginning, because Ichigo even calls him out. He's just like, wait, how could you have known about me ever since I met Rukia? That's not it. No, Aizen knew about you from the beginning, from when you were born. And for those of you that are excited for the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, you'll find out how Aizen found out and how Aizen knew when that day comes. But anyways, this reveal, this is, again, one of those things why Aizen is like up on this pedestal for me. He is the benchmark. It depends on how you reach Aizen's level. And that's just the thing. He's planned everything. It's all according to his plan. And yeah, so he kind of catches Ichigo off guard with this, and Ichigo's shocked at this. He's like, wait, what? What's going on? And, oh, don't even talk to me about, hold on. We haven't even touched on the Hogyoku part. Yeah, so apparently Aizen was trying to make his own Hogyoku, and he did, but it wasn't complete. And neither was Kisuke's. And so his whole idea and plan was to get both of them together and make the final one and make the pure, unadulterated Hogyoku. And that kind of plays into his downfall as well, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But yeah, Ichigo's just standing there dumbfounded at the fact that, oh, my whole life, my whole career has been groomed by this man. And Isshin Kurosaki comes in, takes Ichigo away, and we don't really get a discussion with the two, which is kind of good because it harkens back to that moment, and Kubo even does a good job of showing it, where, if you remember back with like the whole Grand Fisher part of the story, where Rukia was just like, you know, I'm not going to ask you what happened or what was going on or any of those questions. When you're ready to talk about it, I will be here to talk about it. And yeah, Ichigo basically does the same thing here with his dad. He's just like, look, I do have questions, but I'm not going to ask them right away because I want you to be ready to talk about it. You know, I'm sure you had your reasons for it and why you're in this position and why we're in this position, but I'm going to let you be you. And when you're ready to talk about it, we can talk about it. So, yeah, those two end up fighting Aizen and Gin. So, yeah, Ichigo fights off against Gin, and Gin. Let's talk about powers real quick. So now we get Ichigo versus Gin, and Gin's power is basically his sword extends, but that's not the full extent of it. His sword extends very fast, and by very fast I mean like 5 times the speed of sound fast. He tries to trip up Ichigo a little bit by saying, "Oh, you want to know how long my sword can get?" Kind of throwing him off the scent, or at least trying to throw him off the scent of how quick his Bankai is. And his Bankai is apparently the fastest one out there. And yeah, they kind of have a fight. It really doesn't go anywhere. It's more of like Gin trying to talk to Ichigo. And again, the character work we do here is great because Ichigo, he makes a comment about how, you know, the stronger he's been getting, the more he's able to read somebody when they clash. And anytime he's clashed with Gin, he hasn't felt anything. Like, at least with other people he has, but with Gin, he feels nothing from him. Which is very interesting because Gin, again, like, you always feel like he has an ulterior motive and that he's holding something back. And we do find out what that is here in a little bit, but we're not there yet. And Gin, he keeps downplaying Ichigo and talking down to Ichigo because part of it, and this was Aizen's part too, when he was talking to Ichigo, was he kept mentioning how he's holding himself back. Like, he's so scared and he's realizing that he's not in a good position to really fight them. I mean, Ichigo keeps getting schooled by Aizen, and Gin keeps schooling him, and Gin even knows that Ichigo can be scary and he can defeat him. But Ichigo doesn't do anything. He can't do anything. He's just too nervous and all that. Now, back to Isshin confronting Aizen, we end up having Kisuke coming by and Yoruichi coming in to fight Aizen. And of course, you know, Urahara and Aizen are having their back and forth. And we see that with them, we're starting to see more of Aizen, how he keeps questioning things. He wants to learn things. He wants to understand things. He wants to be somebody that knows all. And he kind of acts like it too, like a know-it-all. And actually, I can't believe I forgot to even mention this, but earlier when he was confronting the captains of the Soul Society, he was talking to Soifon, and he mentioned that he was a teacher, and I can really see that because a teacher kind of acts like Aizen. Like, Aizen acts like an educator in a way because he keeps questioning things and keeps wanting to push things forward and move forward. So he's like a researching teacher in a way. But just the way he talks with Kisuke, Kisuke's the only person that Aizen sees as an equal, at least intellectually. And God, so much other stuff I want to talk about, but I'm gonna save it for later. But so those three kind of try to go into him, and because Aizen has formed with the Hogyoku, we find out more about the Hogyoku. The Hogyoku is basically an entity that can bring about a strong desire, and so we get the examples of, like, you know, Chad and Orihime getting their powers and all that. We get that with Shinji not being able to go back to being a Soul Reaper. He's now a Visor, like things like that. And so the Hogyoku goes towards somebody's will, like a very strong will. And with Aizen, he starts evolving. So he's like in this chrysalis state, kind of like this, like a cocoon kind of thing, and he's still fighting everybody off fairly easily, and then obliterates them, and then breaks out of his cocoon, and he's all got a new haircut, got darker eyes. It's kind of creepy because he's all like, "Oh, look at me, I'm hot," and all that. And he just leaves. He goes to Karakura Town in the Soul Society, and that's it. Ichigo and his dad kind of had this conversation before they head out, because, like, again, Ichigo's like, he doesn't want to push himself because he's so scared of becoming that hollow beast again. And luckily, Isshin kind of puts into perspective, hey, you are protecting Karakura Town. You need to protect Karakura Town because everybody that you care about that doesn't have the power to fight cannot fight and will die. So you need to do something. You need to help out. You need to do this. And so they go through and enter the Precipice World on their way to the Soul Society. So as Ishin and Ichigo are in the Precipice World and all that, they kind of realize something. They're like, wait a minute, something's off. The cleaner's not here. And we get a little backstory about the cleaner and like the restrictive current and all that, how they operate and everything, and how the Precipice World is basically like, it's almost like a hyperbolic time chamber, like in Dragon Ball Z. So it's like, it runs like a 2,000 times denser than our time or something. But basically, if they train for 2,000 hours there, only an hour would pass in the real world. So they spend some time in there, so Ichigo can not only get a power-up, but he learns the final Getsuga Tensho. And what he has to do in there is he not only has to fight Tensazan Getsu, but a Tensazan Getsu mixed with his hollow form. And it's his hollow form that's now a Vasto Lord. And that's... we don't see much of the fight, but there's more to that fight than meets the eye. But wait a minute, hold on. If the cleaner's gone, what happened to the cleaner? What happened with that? Turns out Aizen destroyed it, because again, he's arrogant and cocky enough to just destroy it. And him and Gin end up entering Karakura Town, and they go after Ichigo's friends, because Aizen, he wants to pull a Toguro here, where he wants to continually push Ichigo. This is why he didn't kill Ichigo before they left. Because, I mean, as easy as he could have, he didn't. He knew Ichigo would come after him, and he knew that Ichigo would try to find a way to be stronger before meeting them. So he was trying to give him that chance, and part of that was to kill all his friends and have them crucified in town, so Ichigo could see them right then and there, and power up and be all pissed off and all that. Unfortunately, Keigo and the others, they do try to fight back. Again, it doesn't really do anything at all. Hell, even Rangiku shows up. Like, she got healed enough to where she can at least move and run and chase after everybody, and her and Gin have a confrontation. Now, it's left a little open-ended, but we see what happens with that, because when Gin arrives back with Aizen, they kind of have a little chat, and Gin's just like, okay, well, I'll go ahead and take care of these kids. And he touches Aizen's blade, and then he releases his Bankai right through Aizen and brings it back out. And we see one of the weaknesses that Aizen actually has. If you can touch Kyoka Suigetsu, you will not get hypnotized. And so Gin does that. And not only does he stab Aizen through the heart, but we find out just a little bit more about Gin's sword. Turns out when it like extends and contracts, it turns into dust a little bit, and there's like a poison inside of the blade. And so Gin left a little bit of his sword inside of Aizen, and it eventually like destroys Aizen, and Gin takes the Hogyoku and runs away. Now, this is where we get just more backstory of all this. So, Gin, why did he betray Aizen? Turns out, him and Rangiku were, they were childhood friends and all that, and childhood friends kind of lovers in a way. And so Gin, he saw that Rangiku was down, and like, apparently some guys had stolen some of her spirit energy and gave it to Aizen, and Gin saw all of this. So he vowed revenge. He vowed to take back what was lost from Rangiku, and he tried to do that. Shame it failed, because Aizen just evolves even further into like this butterfly figure and stabs Gin and kills him, and basically tells him, hey, that thing that I did, the Hogyoku has chosen me as its master. So, no, it's going to keep me alive. It's going to keep me pushing forward. And so now Gin's dead. Aizen's caught up with Ichigo's friends and all that. All hope seems lost, and Rangiku's tearful. Now, this part actually kind of made me tear up a little, because, like, I always kind of understood Gin and Rangiku's story, but I don't know, it kind of hit a little harder this time. I think because, like, now that I'm older and able to emotionally connect with these a little bit better, like, man, it's kind of tragic in a way, because like Gin always just kind of left Rangiku around and just kind of led her on a little bit, never really fully telling her the truth or even leaving anything for her to remember him by. But their relationship and their dynamic is just so interesting and just also just so tragic too, because again, like Gin, he loved Rangiku and he hated the fact that Aizen took something from her, and he vowed for the rest of his life to terminate him, and unfortunately it didn't happen. But again, all hope seems lost now. Nobody can stand up to Aizen except for one person. Ichigo shows up. Hey, how you doing, Ichigo? You doing good, buddy? You're a little taller now. You got some longer hair. Your dad has a beard. Cool. Your Zanbakuto is like attached to your arm. That's also neat. Okay, cool. So Gin at least sees Ichigo one last time and dies. There is a funny part here too where Ichigo's just like looking over at everybody all nice and proper and all that. He sees the Afro dude and he tries to remember his name. He says a different name, and I don't know, it's just fun. One thing about Ichigo here is he's very calm. He's not angry or pissed off of anything. It reminds me of a lot of Yusuke when he was fighting Toguro. So again, the Togashi comparisons there, where, you know, Toguro pushed him to a limit and to reach that limit and to fight him at that limit. And Yusuke wasn't mad or anything. He was kind of sad in a way and just kind of melancholy. And God, what comes next is the most cathartic beatdown ever. Because earlier in their fight, Aizen even questioned Ichigo. He's just like, why are you fighting me? Like, you don't need to fight me. Did I hurt anybody? No, I might have led them astray, but, you know, you're not part of the Soul Society. Why should you care? You're just a substitute Soul Reaper. You don't have to fight me. Why are we fighting? There's no hatred with you. And I think that's the main point here, is it's not necessarily a sense of hatred, it's a sense of duty. Because Ichigo, he's resigned himself to protecting everybody, using his power to protect everybody. And that's what we see here. We see Ichigo just give, again, the most cathartic beatdown to Aizen. Like, he says, hey, we need to go to a different location. I don't want to fight here. And Aizen tries to start giving him another monologue. Ichigo just grabs him by the face and just goes. They just go to like some wasteland or whatever, and they have a fight. And just like, it's kind of funny because Aizen is still trying to talk down Ichigo, saying, I feel nothing from you. Oh, you just got physically stronger, you know. You still can't compare to me. I can't even feel your spiritual pressure, which is something we'll touch on here in a minute. But like the whole time, like they're destroying mountains and doing all this stuff, and Aizen goes in for this one shot, and Ichigo grabs his sword with his hand, just like what Aizen did when they first confronted each other in Soul Society. And Ichigo's just like, yeah, those mountains that exploded, those are because of me. You don't stand a chance against me. And Ichigo just slices him down one more time. Hogyoku, you know, evolves Aizen even further. And you think Aizen is now like on the level of Ichigo and able to give him a good, proper fight. No, Ichigo still just blows everything away and all that. And as Ichigo is like getting ready for his final attack, we get that remembrance again. Because this whole time, there was a time back when Ishin was fighting Aizen and all that, where the captains couldn't really feel Aizen's spiritual pressure. But as Ishin and Ichigo were chasing after Aizen, Ichigo made mention of Aizen's spiritual pressure and how he could feel it, how he could sense it. And one thing that they've been trying to do with this whole confrontation is saying that when you've reached a certain plane or a certain level, you can't feel their spiritual pressure. Like, it's almost inaudible to you. And Aizen even makes mention that he like lowers his spiritual pressure so people can even feel it. That's why like some of the humans like Tatsuki could even feel his spiritual pressure, because he was lowering it so low so they could feel it. But he still had a lot more left. But see, Aizen's never experienced that feeling of not being able to feel somebody's spiritual pressure. And with that, Ichigo is at a higher level than Aizen. And we see Mugetsu, this form. Oh my gosh, just if anything were to describe Bleach, it would be Mugetsu. and just the story around Mugetsu, which is the final Getsuga Tensho. And the way Ichigo had to go about getting this kind of power, he had to fight Tensei Zangetsu mixed with the Hollow. And we see some of those scenes as well. And with Ichigo fighting it, he realized that, look, if this was really a fight to the death, then this guy could have beaten me easily, like way back then. And the whole point of it was for Ichigo to accept Tensei Zangetsu's blade. And it wasn't something that was going to hurt him or anything. It was something to make him more powerful, because the final Getsuga Tensho, Mugetsu, turns Ichigo into the Getsuga Tensho. With this, though, comes the ultimate sacrifice. Well, not the ultimate, because he's still going to live. But Ichigo loses all of his powers because of this. And that's the ultimate sacrifice that he has to make. And it's a big sacrifice, because when you look at Ichigo's character, the core crux of it is him wanting to protect other people. And we see his fallout with this here in a little bit. I think the most important thing about the final Getsuga Tensho here is it technically doesn't really defeat Aizen. Because Ichigo does it, and Aizen's still up. Like, yeah, he's like battle scarred and like still bloodied and bruised and all that, but Aizen's still up. He's not dead. Like, Aizen survived the final Getsuga Tensho. But all of a sudden, like, these lights start appearing on his chest and his ribs, and Urahara shows up. And it turns out during Urahara's, like, Kido barrage that he was hitting Aizen with earlier, there was some Kido hidden in there that Urahara specifically made for this, where when Aizen finally got into a vulnerable state, which he did, because the Hogyoku ended up leaving him, and ended up, like, breaking itself and all that, and just dismissing Aizen altogether. And so this causes Aizen to kind of spiral a little bit and be sealed away. Now, as Aizen's being sealed away, we get a little hint at some things, because Aizen yells to Kisuke, he's just like, how can you be fine with the status quo? You know things, you're smart, you like to ask things, you know what that thing is. And Urahara, this kind of wakes him up a little bit. He's just like, oh, so you know what the Soul King is, huh? And so we're left with that little mystery there, which, watch 1,000 Year Blood War arc and you'll understand what that is. And yeah, Aizen's defeated. He's sealed away, at least. So that's one thing I really like about the end of this Aizen fight, is that Ichigo, he technically didn't beat Aizen, because Aizen was still up. Aizen still could have defeated Ichigo. He probably would have if it wasn't for Kisuke. Because Ichigo, again, he used up all his power. I don't know. It might have been another, like, Sasuke, Naruto grudge fight like they had with their final fight. But, I mean, damn, there wasn't much left. I mean, even Kyoka Suigetsu was dusting away, too. So they could have just had a fisticuff fight. I don't know. Who knows? But our fallout here, you know, Karakura Town gets sent back to the real world. A lot of people live thanks to Unohana and Squad 4 and all that. I mean, Hiyori gets attached and all that, and all of our friends are fine. Again, Yami got off screen. That's whatever it is. But the main thing I want to talk about with this is just the regret that Ichigo feels. So again, like, Ichigo's whole character is about how he wants power to protect people, and in order to protect everybody, he had to give all of that up. And now he's kind of live with that, because now he's not going to be able to see ghosts, he's not going to be able to see Rukia, he's not going to be able to see hollows, he has no spiritual pressure left, no spiritual powers. And so now he's just going to be a human being, which, you know, at the beginning of the series, yeah, he would have loved that. He would have loved to not be able to see ghosts and all that. But unfortunately now that he's made friends and all that, and now that he has had enough power to protect everybody, he can't. And he's got to live with that now. He's got to live like a normal person. He's got to live like Keigo now, you know? And that's the other thing I wanted to mention too. Like, I didn't talk too much when I was just giving the rundown of everything, but like Keigo and the rest, like, we actually get some good character moments with them too, where, like, you know, they are a tight-knit group and all that, but just a little bit character moment, like especially with Mizuhiro being like, he didn't really trust anybody until Ichigo came around, and then he was starting to be a little bit more open and all that. So I don't know, it's just nice to see that, and of course seeing Don Kanoji still being his usual self, but I don't know, it's just really nice to see. Back to like Ichigo talking to Urahara, he also talks to him a little bit about Aizen, because now that Ichigo was on his level, he could finally read Aizen's sword, and he mentioned something about like Aizen having so much power. Hogoku was really something that spoke to somebody's will and tried to will whatever they wanted. What if Aizen didn't want all that power? Because Aizen, with having all that power, things could get very lonely because he can't really connect with anybody because everybody's weaker than him, especially in the Soul Society. You can't walk around and just be dusting everybody just at your mere presence. Like, that sucks, man. So Ichigo just sensed a lot of loneliness from Aizen's sword, which, I mean, kind of makes sense, because again, like, researchers like that, like Aizen, tend to be very lonely people. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just nice, and then, everybody comes there, and Ichigo passes out for 10 days, and those 10 days we just kind of check in on everybody. Rangiku's thinking about Gin, Ichigo is trying to get stronger, same with, like, Hisagi and Izuru, all of them. Everyone's just trying to come back from this war. Hell, we even get a funny moment with Yamamoto when he yells at Sunsui, Kanpachi, and Byakuya for losing their captain's robes, and they all have a really bad statement on what the captain's robes mean. And he even lost his arm, so he's a bit nerfed. I struggle with saying that because of Thousand Year Blood War arc, but we'll see what that day comes. Yeah, Ichigo passed out for 10 days, everybody's doing fine, and now the anime has a filler arc after this, which kind of has Ichigo losing his powers gradually throughout it. The manga ends everything here, where Ichigo like looks at Rukia and is just like, you take care, and she kind of like starts disappearing and all that, signifying that Ichigo has lost his powers. I don't know which one I mean, I prefer the manga because it was really done beautifully. I haven't seen what they do with the anime and how the arc really structures around that. I actually kind of skipped that filler arc, so I will be watching that, as I'm working on this video and all that. But, I mean, yeah, that's basically the end of this saga, like I said. I mean, again, a lot of great character work here, and a lot of just things that... This feels like a finale, and a lot of people, their biggest complaint with Bleach is, oh, it fell off at the Soul Society, oh, it should have ended here with Aizen. I mean, I get that, I understand that, but there's still a lot of loose threads going on. Like, there's things that was even hinted at, like, with Zangetsu and the Hollow mixing it together. Yeah, keep a note on that one, people who are blind to Thousand Year Blood War arc. There's things with, like, Aizen. I mean, he only got sealed for his crimes. He's sealed for like 20,000 years. That's it? That's all you're getting, dude? Okay, cool, whatever. I mean, just seeing where Ichigo goes from here, because I mean, there's still another arc after this. There's still 2 other arcs after this. And yeah, I mean, I'm getting excited because I can't wait to talk about the next arc, because a lot of people have been praising it a lot lately. And I remember it just being, alright, whatever. But like, if I gave this arc a grade, it gets an A+. I mean, this was fantastic work from Kubo again. The character work, the character interactions, everything to do with like finales of character works. I mean, even Tosen, who ended up exploding, I mean, he didn't get a happy send-off. He went down the path of revenge, and that path leads down to something like this, where like, you don't get your happy ending. You get nothing. You lose. It's over. And all that. And, I mean, Aizen survives. He's just sealed off on a chair for 20,000 years, whatever. But, man, I really like this arc. And again, like, Aizen as a villain, I mean, I still have him up as my #1, spoiler alert, for, future series and all that. But this is why, though, because, like, he orchestrated all of this. He was precise with like how he wanted things to go, and especially with that thing with Ichigo, like grooming him into the person he was. He was even disappointed, like when Ichigo arrives, he's like, oh, I don't feel anything from you. Man, I'm disappointed. I thought you'd be even stronger, but I don't feel anything. But like just the way he talked to everybody and just the way that his comeuppance came up again, most cathartic thing I have ever witnessed in anything really. I mean, just that beatdown, just that initial face grab of Ichigo's and just bolting with him. It's just it's so good, it's so great. And then we get more lore dump with things like the Hogyoku, the Arrancars, like things like that. Like this was just a nice little way of ending this saga. And yeah, so next Bleach video is probably going to be, well, it's gonna be the last like big video of Bleach, at least until 1,000-Year Blood War arc ends. But yeah, it's gonna be the Lost Agent arc, which again is an arc that has been getting some praise lately, which I remember it not getting praise back in the day, and I know I have my thoughts with it especially, and I'm kind of looking forward to it because I think my opinion might change on it greatly. And especially with seeing like the fallout with Ichigo and like losing his powers and all that, like I'm looking forward to diving deep with this next arc because it deals with all of that, and it deals with like a lot of other things dealing with Ichigo and his friends, and plus it's a time skip, so isn't that just great? So I'm just gonna leave it off there. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you want to talk about anything, have your own thoughts and opinions about Aizen, the Arrancars, the Espada, all that stuff, be sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on everything. Be sure to like the video if I entertained you in any way, shape, or form. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next Bleach video, as well as hitting the bell icon so you get notified of every time I upload a video. And as always, people, I've been your world champion. Catch you guys in the next one. See you. I don't need better things to come.